Hi, I'm Brent Gleason, CEO at Taking Point Leadership. With me here today is Mathew Lehnig, VP of Programs at Taking Point Leadership, longtime friend, teammate, and colleague. This is the third of our three-part series of a leadership journey, and we're going to spend some time again with Mathew talking about his key lessons learned as a senior leader in Naval Special Warfare and how that's applied then to his career now and beyond. So again, learn more about Taking Point Leadership at takingpointleadership.com. And of course, our new e-learning platform and flagship course, which is a change leadership certification course applicable to all leaders at any level. Learn more about that course at takingpointacademy.com. All right, Mathew, how you doing today, brother?
Doing good. Lots of stuff going around the house, but told them all to be quiet during this
You told
time.
all the contractors around the house to be quiet. Good.
Yeah, no, they're fine. They're on the other side of the house doing things, so it's all good.
They can take their mandatory union break.
Right.
Well, again, we've talked a lot about your backstory, your younger life before Naval Special Warfare, into the early days of Naval Special Warfare. In the second part of this series, we really dug into sort of the middle part of that career as you started to develop as a leader, move up in rank, what those experiences did for you, but also how you started to evolve in your leadership journey and that maturation process, and how that started to really gel as you took on more and more complex roles in very complex organizations in Naval Special Warfare. So wanted to kind of pick up where we left off and talk about really focusing on the last 10 to 15 years of your leadership journey within Naval Special Warfare. And then we're going to get into kind of how that applies to you today and what the future holds. But tell us a little bit about, what you can anyways, about, kind of those last 10 years, in a very elite organization within NSW and being a senior leader in that organization at the tip of the spear. What did that feel like for you, as a leader? Because we want to also segue into how you started using those skills to develop other leaders. So give us a little of that backstory, then we'll kind of go from there.
Sure. Yeah. I'll back up just a little bit. So, I commissioned in 2010, and I spent the first years abroad working with and being an ambassador to partner nations in Southeast Asia. I gained a lot of experience in diplomacy while working with several different embassies and higher level organizations. So that led me to level up in several different areas. I took several courses in diplomacy, litigation and negotiation, regional geography, international affairs, advanced writing courses in speech, analytic, rhetoric, and all of those continue to help me throughout, my career. And then in 2012, I was the OIC of several divisions within our training detachment. So I ran assaults for a while, and then the admiral wanted to go back into the maritime realm. So I took over maritime and TGM, and there was a lot of leveling up there, both in basic and advanced skills, and many great opportunities to mentor and be mentored by some of the world's finest individuals. And to be honest, little did I know that, both of those tours of service would set the rest of my career in motion. There were a few things that had to occur, for this to happen. However, each was kind of beyond my control, outside my purview. Those were discussions that were happening at higher levels, but it was pretty interesting. I actually had orders to an entirely different region than where I would eventually end up. And yeah, it's kind of a funny story. I was up on the second deck in the fight room at TRADET. I was all bloodied up, from a hard session of MMA. I had a good friend of mine, Jimmy May, who is his organization is doing quite well, and him and we were going at it, and
Who was kicking whose ass here?
I think it was a little bit of both. We were both highly skilled and great hands, so it was quite a bit of fun. But anyhow, I looked over and there's the operations officer and the command warrant, and they called me over, and I was, like I said, highly exhilarated. Still, I was super bloodied up, and they both looked at each other and looked at me, and they're like, maybe we should come back a little bit later.
This is the guy.
No. Yeah. And I was just, anyway, so I said, what's up? What's going on? And then they closed that door to that particular region. But at the time, the perfect one opened up immediately, so I accepted it without even discussing it with my wife at the time. She was happy about it though. And then 3 weeks later,
Luckily, yeah.
yeah, right, exactly. We're on our way to Hawaii.
Yeah.
And so, that was, as you were talking about leveling up, so that was a completely different animal. At the time, the higher level organization was moving from Coronado to Hawaii. And so there was a minimal crew that was actually, at the group level. I was recruited, to be the OIC of the training detachment. However,
Right.
The boss, he had different ideas. He pulled me into his office, during the onboarding process and said, Matt, I know you came here for this position, but I need you to take over the training for the entire organization.
So,
right.
having known you for 21, 22 years, I want to ask, taking on that new challenge. Obviously, I know there was excitement. There was new career opportunities. However, at the same time, totally, really, for those who don't understand, we can't get into too much of the details. A very different organization within what people generally think of the SEAL teams, Naval Special Warfare. So there had to have been a ton of stuff for you to learn in the first place before you could be the leader of the training detachment. So was there a little bit of fear, a little trepidation? Were you nervous about this at all? Or was it kind of a blend of excitement and nerves? What was that like?
So, really, when I was running the maritime organization over at Trade One, we did several trips out to SDV. So I kind of knew what they were doing, I kind of saw a lot of the technology that they had, and we were utilizing a lot of that. Now, we didn't have the platform, but, the undersea skill sets, were getting better and better on the West Coast. But, to talk about it, they pulled me from this training side of the detachment that I wanted to be, and then he asked me to be his N32. And so if you were to look at the N32 on the East and West Coast, they have about 8 people. And so I asked him, I'm like, that's fantastic. How many people do I have under my command? And then he's like, well, we're short of manning. So if you look in a mirror, there'll be two of you. Right. And so, I was kind of at that point, I was like, wow, okay, so I'm definitely going to be drinking from the higher fire hose, because there was a lot to learn in the undersea realm. But, I was very fortunate because there was one man, I'm not going to get his last name, but his first name was Ian. And he had been in that organization for over 20 years. And he was literally my saving grace. I mean, he mentored me for the next 6 months as I was learning, to navigate this highly complex organization. I would literally say that he gave me about 10 years of undersea knowledge in those 6 months. I mean, it was a crash course, from HELL, if you will. So, that was a really big learning curve. And, I had to be very adaptable. I had to be very open to suggestions. I realized that I wasn't the smartest person in the room a lot of the times. So I began to surround myself by very smart people that knew the organization very well. And like I said, Ian was one of those, and he was truly fantastic. So, during that process, I had to develop because it was new. I was the N32. I was building this out. So I had to develop, build out, and lead a very complex and crucial part of the organization for the next 4 years. I set policy and doctrine, enhanced training protocols. I was working with multiple internal and external agencies. It was highly exhilarating, like you said, but it was also highly stressful. The learning curve was extremely high, and the organization, had a basically failure is not an option.
Right.
And so that was extreme. That was very extreme.
You posted actually an article today on Forbes titled 8 Ways to Get Comfortable Being Uncomfortable. Those who follow us or those who follow the SEAL teams or Naval Special Warfare have probably heard that terminology before, but really it's about being intentional in your path to developing resilience, grit, and a growth mindset. And in some of those 8 tips that you provide, continuous improvement, being accepting of feedback, and continually finding new ways to gain and develop your knowledge towards that path to mastery really are seem crucial, obviously, in the continuation of that journey. And you would think, 20, 24 years into your naval special warfare career, you wouldn't have to do that. But as we teach leaders in organizations all over the world, obviously that development is not linear. As they take on new roles or take over new complex organizations or go from one organization to a different organization as a new CEO or a new vice president or what have you, new skills need to be learned. Like you said, finding new ways to understand the business, the organization, but also if you're going to be putting out policy and new methodologies and going through organizational transformation, it's a lot you got to learn before you can even effectively lead those initiatives.
Absolutely.
So with
So
that, I wanted to ask you, in spite of all the other priorities that you had on your plate, how to outside of formal, we do have some leadership development programs within NSW, not as much as we probably should, but because we learn so much just on the job. I mean, if nothing else, we're a learning organization, just constant learning, constant training, constant teaching. So what did you do, let's say more informally, to develop the leaders around you? How did you take your skills as you're learning the technical nuances of that organization? How did you take your leadership skills to develop others?
yeah, that's a great question. I guess for me, over the years, I really wanted to get to know people on a personal and a professional level. So I would
Yeah.
engage with my team at every opportunity. I had brown bag lunches, one-on-one discussions. I engaged with the team on training sites where we would discuss the situation, lessons learned, the ideas on how to prove things in the future. We would discuss how they were leading at the time. We would talk about better ways to lead, and I would just bring a lot of that tacit knowledge that I had and learned because, obviously, not only was I the OAC, but I was also part of a training cadre.
Right.
I have a master training certification, and so I passed a lot of that knowledge on. And as a leader, you always have to remember that, and we've talked about this a lot. And as you well know, all the eyes are on you.
Yeah.
So you have to lead and set the example. So there really wasn't anything I would ask my team to do that I wasn't willing to do myself,
Yeah.
And then additionally, I was pursuing my academic goals, towards the end of my career. And, as you well know, I received both a bachelor's and a master's degree in leadership and advanced
Yeah.
certification, and it was complicated, but not unattainable. And I pushed that mental mindset to all of the team. I'm pretty proud. I mean, at the end, I had 5 of my teammates earn their bachelor's. I had 2 move on to their master's degrees. I think, after I left, a few more earned their master's degrees. After I left, the organization, on top of that, I had several conversations with individuals about, the commissioning, and I would like to say that I contributed to about 15 teammates commissioning to warrant officers, so
Right.
for me, that was, being able to build somebody out on both a personal and professional level,
Yeah.
utilizing, the skill sets and the leadership fundamentals that I learned over the years and being able to pass that on to the next generation. Yeah, it's something that, you leave a little bit of a legacy. I still get text messages and phone calls. So, that tells me that I did something right, and guys are still calling and,
Like you ruined
asking.
my life, you son of a.
And maybe some of those, but it's really more just like guidance. I've got a lot of guys that are, transitioning from the military into the civilian sector. So
Yeah.
I've met with several of them and I'm mentoring them through that process as well. And it's
Well, what you said
highly
that really
gratifying.
resonated, was the personal side of their development. Because yes, the academic side leads to professional development, but it really, in large part, sometimes if not even more, leads to that personal development and growth, and also what that journey is going to look like after they transition out of
Mm-hmm.
NSW, out of the military into the civilian sector, looking for that new career path. You and I were at the Global Leadership Summit last week in Dallas, and one of the takeaways I got from the first keynote, which was all about trust, creating a culture of trust, and how leaders give and receive trust, and how that enhances speed of execution, collaboration, just general results, but also the development of people. And one of the things I
Mhm.
wrote down was, if you don't show that you care about your people, they won't care about the mission.
Absolutely.
And the mission in NSW and the mission, to your point, the no fail mission and what you did in undersea warfare, pretty important. So if not one of the most important missions these days in NSW, and therefore showing certain degrees of empathy, but also not even so much empathy, but really helping people develop their skills is, one of the core tenets of great leadership.
Yeah, I think it's you can come from a professional level, but you also have to come from a personal level, right? Because we never really know what's going on with an individual outside of the persona, that I like to call the undersea realm or the SEAL teams, right? They put on a face, they put on a mask, and they move forward because they're technical at what they do, they're professional and they're experts. But sometimes you got to peel that onion back a little bit, to really get to know the person. And once you get to know that person, you build that trust, you build that camaraderie, you build that cohesion, and there's really nothing that they wouldn't do for you. I mean, the big thing about that I learned is if I'm there till 10 o'clock and they're till 10 o'clock and they're there till 10 o'clock and they come in and they still see me at the desk, they're like, man, this is really tough. It's uncomfortable, but my leader's standing right there. He wants to hear the debrief. He wants to sit in. He wants to hear what happened. I mean, that says a lot, and it really means a lot to them. And so, I found that early. But I mean, even in your career, as you mentor guys, there's so many different stages. So you start off early, and it's more of, you want to get them experts at their field that they're in charge of, and then as they grow and advance, you're building their leadership skills, opening up their aperture a little bit to see what's going on. As they advance more in their career, the curtain opens up, and then they realize, wow, I thought I knew a lot, but there's a lot more that I need to learn. And so as you develop as a leader and you start moving up into these higher levels within your organization, you need to bring that back down, to the guys that are in the field, because it'll help them be ready and they won't be surprised when that
Right.
curtain does fall back. And so I was really good at, bringing the guys into the really high level, discussions that we had to make sure that my senior level guys were there and that they were getting, that type of professional development. So as they made senior chief, master chief, or went on to an officer or whatever, that they were really educated, understood what was happening, really knew the global picture, and it could advance the organization forward.
Awesome. Awesome. If you had to, and sometimes this is a challenging exercise, but if you had to boil all your leadership lessons, your insights down into three themes, three philosophies, three tips that you would give me, or one of the senior executives we work with in one of our client partner organizations, based on your NSW experience, what would those three tips be?
So I've got really three philosophies. The first one is, servant leadership. Putting the needs of others first is extremely important to me. It took me a while to find my humility, but once I did, I understood that training,
Hmm.
meaning of servant leadership. Like I really understood what it meant, and it was, again, it was a developmental process. I realized that I always was a servant leader. It was just in different capacities for different levels of different individuals through their career from start off until, they were at the higher levels. So for me, servant leadership was probably
Okay.
the number one. Personal leadership was another one.
I
I've learned that my faith, my beliefs,
was going to ask.
my principles, yeah, my values guide my actions, and they will continue to do so. And so when people look at my leadership and I don't falter on those, that builds trust, because it doesn't matter if it's good, it doesn't matter if it's bad, I'm still going to have those beliefs and principles and values that guide my actions, right? And then
Yep.
I think the last one is really kind of transformational leadership. It is super important for a leader to provide support and guidance during times of instability within an organization or business.
Right.
While also empowering them to reach their full potential, both personally and professionally.
Absolutely.
So And I think that that's very important, and when you give them that autonomy and you empower them, you see leaders transform beyond what you could have even imagined. So, you have some leaders out there that like to micromanage and oversee, they like to have their fingers in everything. What I would say is give your team the autonomy to move forward and you will be blown away.
I love it. Love it. So servant leadership. First step is really finding and embracing your own levels of humility so that
Yeah,
you can shed the ego and learn how to reverse that org chart to an upside down pyramid where you're literally, like there was referenced at the Global Leadership Summit last week is, instead of your traditional org chart, it looks more like a tree where the senior leaders are the roots down at the bottom and everything grows up and is more adaptable, but you're the foundation of that, but you're serving from the bottom, providing that nutrients, that knowledge, that guidance and mentorship. And then personal leadership. Absolutely. I think my biggest takeaway from what you said there, and they referenced this last week, was consistency. So
absolutely.
people being very consistent in adhering to your values, based on your faith and all of your life's experiences, but being very consistent.
Absolutely.
Leadership becomes very inauthentic when people see you deviate from those values. They realize they aren't really true and authentic values, and therefore you lose credibility real fast. But you exponentially gain that credibility with radical consistency over and over, and how you make decisions, how you interact with people. And then the last part, of course, is learning how to really, in a true and impactful way, empower people, giving them the tools, giving them training, the left and right lane markers, as you usually say, and empowering them. And that enhances creativity, collaboration. They take ownership over their job functions, because you're giving them, the power, autonomy, and that decentralized level of decision making to execute the way they want to. You give them the what, and they figure out the how. Amazing.
Absolutely.
So now, here you are out here in the scary, dark side of the civilian world, VP of programs at Taking More Leadership. You've now already, been a consultant, a facilitator, and a coach to very, very senior leaders in global organizations, for many months now. What common, let's take this to our viewers, our listeners. What common challenges do you see in all the organizations you work with? Challenges and opportunities, if you will, like we always, say when we're, in our leadership development programs. What are the commonalities? Because that's one interesting blessing that we have that helps us grow and develop too, is whether we're working with a major airline, a global bank, a global healthcare company, a construction organization. Very similar challenges and opportunities in all these organizations, regardless of industry, regardless of size. What are some of those common traits that you see when it comes to their journey towards high performance? What are some of those roadblocks, and what have we seen be effective in helping them overcome those roadblocks?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'd like to reframe the question just a little bit differently, though. So,
Yeah.
what I would say is I never really look at things as a challenge. I like to look at them as opportunities.
Yeah.
So, whenever something presents itself and a leader says, "Hey, this is one of our top challenges," I say, "No, this is one of your top opportunities to move your organization forward." For me, the opportunities in these vastly different organizations, like you said, whether it be major airlines and aviation ground services, global technology, construction, any of those types of companies, they all have very similar complex opportunities as it pertains to leadership development, right?
Yeah.
And so when we do a lot of our processes, and we get a lot of that information back, we find those opportunities. We can also call those gaps,
Yeah.
or those roadblocks, those things like that. But we find those opportunities, that we can help an organization get better, get past that, and then keep continuing to move the organization forward. I think, and you're going to love this, but I think, having been a part of so many volatile, uncertain, complex, and highly ambiguous environments, during my leadership journey, I've developed, really the ability to see what makes each leader and their team unique. to help enhance, their organization effectiveness. And so what I try to do is look at it from a perspective as the VP of programs. When I gather this data, really honing in and, having those discussions and those conversations. And it really hasn't changed much, because within our organization the last few years, we started a program where it was really personal, right? And you really got to know the individual. And what I like is the organizations that we work with, we really build, that foundation of personal and professional at the same
Right.
time. So we become, not only do we want to make their organization better, but we become friends. And then, there's that, like you said, that emotional piece. And so I feel that it's so important to make sure that we elevate that organization. So being able to bring all the leadership skills I've learned over time, from experiential learning, tacit knowledge, academics, etc. It is so important to pass that knowledge on to the business world. And I think, they see the value when you run such complex organizations, the credibility of running such a high complex organization, you know, helps them, look at you from a perspective and say, hey, this guy understands what I'm going through. He's really here to help. He's able to answer my questions. He's able to talk me through these things and really help my organization move the needle forward.
You said exactly the word I was going to say, but then you said it. Key takeaway there is giving them, a unique perspective on, their leadership style, their organization, how they fit into that organization, and from top all the way to the bottom. By helping them understand some of their challenges, some of their obstacles, those opportunities are not unique to most organizations.
Yeah,
But having being able to authentically articulate your experiences, giving that perspective that, hey, this may not be that big of a challenge. You have more room to navigate here than you think. This is not a dead end. This is a new opportunity. I think that absolutely is something that you bring to these leaders, because quite frankly, they can't ever and will never have the same perspective you did, and that's not a fault of theirs if they just haven't had that experience. But really helping them identify the right opportunities, see that through a different lens, look at those obstacles, as sometimes a necessity for personal and professional growth and development, or to help the organization navigate down maybe a slightly new path, towards greatness, better results, better retention, better quality of service or product or whatever it is. So amazing.
yeah, and I also think the one thing that's really really important as well is I like to listen and I like to gather a lot of information. So I am learning just as much from them as they're learning from me because they have a lot of experience in all of these organizations. So even though I am mentoring them, they are also my mentee because I get a lot of that information from them. I'm able to take it, dissect it, utilize it, analyze it, and then come back
Absolutely.
the next time with, you know, curriculum that's really going to engage them a little bit more. So I'm learning a little bit each time. And each organization is a little bit different, which I love.
Yeah.
But again, taking all of that in, it's you have to look at it from being, like you said, humble, giving your experiences, listening to their experiences, and then finding the middle ground and engaging and really taking those opportunities, those gaps, those roadblocks, attacking them together, and then
Yeah.
moving the organization forward. Super important.
That's what I love about what we do is we have the opportunity to learn every single time we
Unbelievable.
engage with leaders. And that's not us. We're not cheating. We're not giving away the secret sauce here, but but we are learning oftentimes just as much. But that gives us perspective to see, okay, this is the challenge and opportunity. This organization is very similar to this organization. So it gives us these sort of
Mhm.
micro case studies to be able to say, hey guys,
Mm.
this situation is not unique to you. This challenge is not unique to you. This is a universal organizational obstacle. It's also a universal
Absolutely.
organizational opportunity. Here's how this organization overcame it. So giving that good sort of diversity of thought and experience, I think adds a lot of value. Matthew, as always, wonderful conversation. And I think that across these three different interviews we've done, you've shared an immense amount of knowledge. Obviously, we can't pack it all into three brief interviews, and there will be more to come for you guys out there listening. But again, Matthew, thank you for doing the work you do with our organization. Thank you for being a longtime friend. For all of you listening, thank you so much. For all of you who are viewing it later on, enjoy. Please share with your teams. Discuss these takeaways. How do they apply to you? How do they apply to your organization? Check us out at takingpointleadership.com. And if interested, of course, check out takingpointacademy.com and feel free to go ahead and register for our Change Leadership Certification course. It is definitely applicable and appropriate to a leader at any level, aspiring leaders and managers, because change is a part of any organization. And with that, thank you guys so much. Have a wonderful rest of your day, wherever you are, or whatever day it is. In the meantime, keep taking point. Thanks.
All right. Take care.